Sam Claflin and Bill Nighy team up for Harlan Coben's Lazarus. It's on Prime Video, and for anyone that might have been burnt out by some of the author's recent adaptations, this one takes on a whole different vibe. Joel Lazarus returns home after his father's death and begins to have disturbing experiences that can't be explained. He quickly becomes entangled in a series of cold case murders as he grapples with the mystery of his father's death and his sister's murder 25 years ago. So like I said, we got Sam Claflin and Bill Nighy starring, and immediately this 6-episode limited series has a storytelling tone that deviates from many of Coben's other works. This has hints, even elements of what might be the supernatural. Claflin's Joel, or Laz as he's known to his friends, is a forensic psychologist who begins to see and hear things in his dead dad's office that are unsettling and extremely mysterious, leading to an ominous and semi-dreadful overtone. Now, Claflin plays Laz as unreliable. Not that he's unhinged, insane, or even stupid. He's racked with traumatic guilt and years of regret, which then work to shape his outlook on life. He's cynical, guarded, which is a good mental protection just thanks to what he does for a living. But this also bleeds over into his personal life, where he's acerbic and gruff to his friends. Now, the series instantly plunges us into the mystery, first with a flashback and then a present tragedy, both of which are dark and intriguing. What follows then for the rest of the show is visits and conversations that we as the audience are going to struggle to determine their truthfulness, even their origin. Now, maybe it was my screening copies, but the production had this fuzzy and oddly lit aesthetic to it. Now, I'm used to British productions that are crisp, not necessarily lacking grittiness, but appearing very cinematic and framed in ways that differ greatly from typical American productions. This kind of looked cheap. But again, it could just have been my screening copies that weren't rendered at their final quality. In case that is, though, how it actually appears, it's a little tough to get accustomed to. Aside from that, though, I did appreciate the bluish tone that a lot of the series contained. It created a cold, almost lifeless sort of vibe. It's not uninteresting, just something devoid of positive emotion, leaning more towards melancholy than hope. And that reinforces the story, I think, in wonderful ways. As I'd mentioned, this is a dark story. It's full of loss, regret, and obviously death. From a mystery perspective, I thought this was executed well. The story manages to obscure the reveals until pretty far into the show. And even when I thought I had guessed correctly, there were a few times I was totally off base. I do think, though, that by the penultimate episode, you will have guessed at all of the answers and be correct. Now, it didn't completely diminish the urgency or the pursuit within the story. There were still a bunch of tense interactions that maintained the pacing and the excitement. There are also several misdirections and misleading images that set up ideas that don't necessarily play out the way that we expect them to. Now, I understand that this can feel a bit like a bait and switch, but because so much of the plot revolves around memories and accounts, it makes sense that we might get glimpses of events in pieces, with some of them being more assumptive than fact. Thankfully, though, there aren't loose ends that are left dangling for us. So even if we're shown things that eventually turn out to be a false lead, the show wraps up the solution so that we can feel confident that everything has been solved. Now, to help present the plot, this has a lot of flashbacks that just kind of appear in the middle of scenes. Now, most of the time, they're easy to determine, but a few times, especially in the first part of the series, I was having a bit of difficulty following who was who in the past versus the present. And it does become much easier as we get to know more about the characters, but it was a bit messy to begin with. And from a character development standpoint, this is uneven in what we're given. I'm not talking about getting everything up front or not. It's just more of we get pertinent information on some of the players while others feel way more like strangers, despite having integral roles within the storytelling. While this doesn't wholly detract from the mystery angle, it does leave me way less connected to people that I probably should have more attachment. I think probably the largest shortcoming of the show is also part of its biggest strength, and that's the ambiguity of the potential supernatural element. Depending on where you stand on beliefs of the afterlife, this could come across as completely plausible or totally immersion-breaking. And because it's never fully stated on what the truth of Laz's experiences are, it has the potential to be bothersome and distracting. But outside of that, this did make the story and then the mystery way more memorable than many of the other recent Coben adaptations. Those have become varying shades of the exact same story. And outside of one or two of them, I have a bunch of trouble even remembering a storyline from them. Here, though, it is unique and strange enough that if nothing else, it's notable. The episodes are all around 50-ish minutes, so it is a bit of a commitment to binge, but not something that's going to kill your entire day. The layers of intrigue work in conjunction to craft a narrative that's complex and twisty, but not so complicated that it can't be followed and guessed at. Sam Claflin, while not fully likable as Laz, does make the character emotionally engaging through suffering and determination, ultimately delivering a performance that feels tormented by guilt without losing his humanity or compassion. And if you don't buy into the possible supernatural bend of the story, hopefully you'll be taken in by the strange uniqueness of the plot, leading to a memorable mystery that can leave you satisfied, but not necessarily in a hopeful mood. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and some brutal violence. I give Harlan Coben's Lazarus 3 out of 5 couches. I'm glad this one kept me guessing. Have you seen any decent mysteries lately? I would love to know what you've watched in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.